Earlier, we talked about dependencies. I told you that dependencies are third-party libraries or frameworks we use in our application. For example, to build a web application, we need an embedded web server like Tomcat. We need libraries for handling web requests, building APIs, processing JSON data, logging, and so on. Now, in Spring Boot applications, instead of adding multiple individual libraries, we can use a starter dependency, which is a curated collection of libraries and frameworks that are commonly used together. They're tested and verified by the Spring development team. So in this example, if we add the starter web dependency, it will bring in a compatible version of these libraries. Let's see this in action. So open up your browser and search for Maven Central. It's right here, central.sonotype.com. Now, Maven Central is a public repository where we can find dependencies for our projects. It's similar to NPM for JavaScript, PyPy for Python, NuGet for .NET, and so on. Now here, let's search for spring-boot-starter-web. All right, here's the first item in the result. This dependency or this project is owned by org.springframework.boot. Now let's click on the dependency name. Now to use this in our project, all we have to do is copy this piece of code in our POM file. Now this piece of code is dependent on our build tool. So up here you can see we have Apache Maven. So for Maven projects, we have to copy this piece of code. But if we use a different build tool like Gradle, then we have to copy a different piece of code, okay? So back to Apache Maven. Now here you can see we have a dependency. The group ID is org.springframework.boot, and the artifact is Spring Boot Starter Web. We also have the version. Now let's copy this to clipboard. Back to IntelliJ. Let's go to our POM file. Now in this file, we have a tag called dependencies, where we can list the dependencies of our project. This new project that we have created has two dependencies by default. One of them is Spring Boot Starter. The other is Spring Boot Starter Test. Now, after these two dependency tags, we're going to paste the piece of code that we just copied. Now here we have an error on the version because IntelliJ cannot find this dependency in our local repository. It cannot find it on our machine. To fix this issue, we have to click on this M box up here for synchronizing Maven changes. So whenever we add a dependency to our project, we have to click this icon to reload our Maven project. And then IntelliJ will download our new dependencies. So I'm going to click this. Now look down here. It's resolving these dependencies. Okay, the error is gone. So this is one way to add a dependency. We go to Maven Central, we copy a piece of code, add it to our POM file, and then reload our Maven project. That's one way. But there is an easier way. First, let me remove this new dependency. So delete. Now here we can press Command and N on Mac or Control and N on Windows to bring up the context menu. Here we select dependency. Now in this search box, we search for spring-boot-starter-web. Now, if this doesn't work on your machine, remove and reinstall IntelliJ. That will solve the problem, okay? Now here you can see various dependencies that match the search pattern. We're going to select this one from org.springframework.boot. And this is Spring Boot Starter Web version 3.3.2. Let's add this to our project. Once again, we have an error here because this version doesn't exist in our local repository. So we click on the Maven icon here to reload our project. And now IntelliJ downloaded this dependency into our local repository. Now, if you look on the right side, we have this Maven panel. In this panel, we have our project. Here we have a node called repositories. So we have two repositories. A local repository, which is a folder on our machine where these dependencies are stored. On Mac, it's inside our home folder /.m2/repository. On Windows, it's probably somewhere like C drive /users /whatever. Now we also have a central repository which references Maven Central. Okay. Now let's take a look inside the dependencies node. So currently we have 3 dependencies in this project. This is the dependency that we just added, Spring Boot Starter Web. Now earlier I told you that starter dependencies are a curated collection of libraries that work together. So if we expand this, you can see here we have another dependency for working with JSON data. We'll talk about this in the future. We have a dependency for Tomcat, which is our embedded web server. We have a dependency to Spring Web and Spring Web MVC. These are used for building web applications. With these libraries, we can process web requests and build APIs. Now, one more thing before we finish this lesson. When working with Spring Boot dependencies, as a best practice, we should remove the version here and let Spring Boot manage versioning for us. Let me explain what I mean. So first, let's remove the version tag. Okay, now let's go to the top. Here on the top, we have this parent tag that references a parent project. Look at the artifact ID. It's Spring Boot, starter, parent. Now, if we hold down the Command key on Mac or Control key on Windows and hover our mouse over here, we can click and go to the POM file of this parent project. So now we are inside a separate POM file. Once again, here we have a parent tag that references a different project, that is Spring Boot dependencies. So once again, hold down Command on Mac or Control on Windows and click here. So here is the actual parent or grandparent of our project. Now, if you're on Mac, press Command and F. If you're on Windows, press Control and F and search for spring-boot-starter-web. Look, here we have a dependency to this package, and the version that is specified here is 3.4.1. Similarly, we have other dependencies and their versions, and these are tested to work together. So back to our POM file. Using this mechanism, we allow the dependencies that we add here inherit their version from this parent project. So if they're listed in the parent project, that version that is compatible with our project will be used here. Otherwise, Maven will use the latest version of those dependencies. Now, this has two benefits. One benefit is that it simplifies our POM file. So down here, where we specify our dependencies, we don't have to include their version. The other benefit is that if we upgrade the version of Spring Boot, all dependency versions are automatically updated to their tested, compatible counterparts. So as a best practice, when working with Spring Boot dependencies, we should remove the version and let Spring Boot manage versions for us.